Da 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 da. Da 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 dee dee. Doodly doo. What's got into you? What's got you so excited? Chris Carter's gonna be here, that's why. Da 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 da. The heck are you singing? What is this? You know, she was the superhero, Chris Carter. Dub da dub dee dub da dub doo. Hey. Wait a minute, Jack. You're doing it again. You're thinking of Linda Carter, who was Wonder Woman? Oh, no, this is Chris Carter, one of the big stars of the World Wrestling Association. Bruiser Bedlam. You mean she's not going to be here? I love that outfit. I mean, bada bing. Would you just say the announcement, please? It's the Outdated Wrestling Hour. Linda, I love you. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Outdated Wrestling Hour. My name is Bob Smith. We're glad to have you here once again. I just killed an entire intro that I loved because I got mad and started, well, you're used to me being a certain way on this show, and I just vented. And I was like, I don't do that. And I thought better of it. You know, some people have been kind of getting on my last nerve lately in the media, and I kind of let loose on them. And I've had some stuff directed at me, believe it or not. Me? Moi? But in any event, it's okay. You know what? Here's what I got to say. You know who you are out there. You know what? Spell my name right. It's easy. It's the easiest name in America. Bob Smith. Spell it right, Jack. Okay? You got to take the good with the bad in any kind of creative endeavor. In any event, while I sit here and stew about those, we will, we are going to have a great guest here this time. And I insist, and I took flack for saying this on social media, and I'm going to say it again. He had one of the great heel turns of the 1980s. His name is Chris Carter. He worked in the World Wrestling Association, better known to many as Bruiser Bedlam. And he's one of the people responsible for saving the doggone territory. It's the big story I didn't even know existed until I discovered the wonder of people like Dave Dynasty, who went out of their way to keep WWA alive, and Dick The Bruiser and everyone else, and put the tapes on YouTube. And now you folks can go see this exciting stuff. And I'm telling you, it's good. It's real good. Don't poo-poo it because you've never heard of it and it's decades old. Some people like Dr. Jerry Graham Jr. and Terry Sullivan and Chris Carter and others, Scott Rechsteiner, Great Wojo, saved the territory and made it exciting in ways I didn't even see coming. So grab yourself your usual hot toddy or your bag of Cheezums, or whatever you like to enjoy as you listen to a show like this. Do you remember Cheezums? They were fake Cheez-Its. Anyway, I'm an idiot. Anyway, get your stuff because this is going to be an exciting and fun conversation with a person I understand is a really great guy who wanted to come on the show. He heard that I was interested and wanted to be here. He actually had some people kind of drop the hints at me, and I went, this is great. So it's going to be Chris Carter. You're going to learn all about him. It's going to be a lot of fun. And we'll be right back after Joe Walsh.
This is Joe Walsh. One thing I do when I'm not playing rock and roll is get on the air as an amateur radio operator. Also called ham radio, is a communication service provided by ordinary people just like you and me. We have a national emergency communication system in place 24/7, 365. Find out more about amateur radio at arrl.org/whatishamradio. See you on the air.
All right, guys. Now, I know in my last show I said I feel like a kid in a candy store. The candy store is still open because I have a fella on here, a professional wrestling star from the WWA or Bruiser Bedlam or whatever you want to call it, in the 80s and 90s. And it is the greatest wrestling too many people haven't seen. It's the middle period of the Bruiser Bedlam television show. Indianapolis-based WWA, Dick The Bruiser's Federation. And they ran some angles and brought in some new stars and changed some old stars. And it worked like gangbusters. And we have one of them here now. He is one of the great turncoats of the 1980s. And I insist, folks, and I've said this on the show and you've heard me do it. This is the second best face to heel turn of the entire decade that I saw. It's Chris Carter. Chris, thank you so much for being here, man. I really appreciate it.
Oh, man, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much. I'm glad you found us. Better late than never.
It's exactly right. And this is the idea of the show for our listeners here. When you guys are done listening to this, I'm sure it's going to be Greek to some of you, but I'll tell you what, go find these shows. They're all over YouTube, thanks to our friend, Chris, Dave Dynasty, right? You just did a show,
Very
right?
well. Very
and,
well.
He has been tireless in this. He's got the old U-matic tapes, and he's paying to have them digitized and put out on YouTube. And there's a lot of, and the Bruiser Bedlam is the name of the show. Now, they're not all the same. There's like different periods of Bruiser Bedlam. But what I want you to do is look for the mid-'80s and see Chris Carter in action, as well as stars like Dr. Jerry Graham as both the manager and the wrestler, Bulldog Don Kent. There was Calypso Jim, I should say.
Calypso
right?
Jim, yeah. Who's now Bobo Brazil Jr.
Right. He's Bobo Jr. now.
Yeah.
Give me another list of the people you worked with and against when you were there in that prime period I'm talking about.
Well, there was Yukon Moose Cholak. Scott Steiner broke in with us and turned into Scott Rechsteiner.
Mm-hmm.
They said, "Hey, we got to do something with him. Can you help him?" I'll see what I can do. And one thing led to another, and off went. Of course, Dick the Bruiser was there. Terry Sullivan was the lead commentator on the show, who did a tremendous job. And
yes,
Terry's
he did.
Still doing a great job to this very day. I believe he's probably the longest running. He's the dean of wrestling commentators to me. People don't know, but he's probably the longest running professional wrestling.
You know something?
Right now.
You're right.
Yeah.
He was doing it when Sully was working.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
This is how far back he goes. Probably 76 or so.
He beats JR by a year. I know that.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right.
Yeah.
Got to give him his props.
I get to work with him to this day.
And doing what? Tell me what you're doing now.
Okay, right now I'm with a organization called Championship International Wrestling. The promoter is Phil Nitro Monahan. I don't know if you know that name, but he was an NWA champion back in the early 2000s. And he's had this promotion for a long time. We're doing a TV show now, and Terry's a lead commentator. I do some color work. I do some work with the booking. I do some work with promos. I do all kinds of stuff with the organization.
To hear you tell me that he's doing play-by-play and you're doing color, like the old man, that brings a smile to my face. You know what? Terry's exceptional. He is so good. I'm sure you'd agree with that.
He is so humble. It is absolutely unbelievable because he gave me an opportunity to work with him and do this. He has taught me so much. I honestly feel I've come a long way under his tutelage. And if he was here standing right now, he'd look at me and want to smack me for saying that because he's such a humble guy. But I'm telling you, he is the best.
When I started the show, I swallowed hard and sent him a message on Facebook. I said, "Will you come on my show?" I didn't even know if he knew who I was or anything. And he went, "Oh yeah, I know who you are." So it was like, wow. And we had a wonderful conversation. And I want to get him and Dave Drayson together on the show.
Oh, yeah, that'd be awesome.
We've been discussing that and just have a different look at. We'll go back to Detroit with both of them.
Here's something for you real quick. Championship International Wrestling. You know what we're doing? We are attempting to bring back and make a territory out of that. We are wrestling in Michigan. We're wrestling in Indiana. We're wrestling in Ohio. And we're looking to get into Illinois.
You've already done it.
Yeah.
That's as much of a territory as there is right now for anybody.
We have put together a TV show in the last few months that we're working on very diligently to make it better and better. It's on Facebook. It's on our Facebook. We have over 6,000 followers on our Facebook. We're on YouTube, and every show is getting better. And there's a lot of good people there. Terry Sullivan, Phil Monahan, who knows a lot about wrestling. It's really amazing how things are coming together for that. I am so excited about it because I honestly feel that there's something there that could happen, and I wouldn't put all my time and effort into it if I didn't feel that way.
I'm sure that's true. It takes a lot to get me to leave the house at my age. I know that much. So it's got to be worth doing. It's got to be worth doing. I'm not doing it, right?
Yeah.
So
we had a show Friday night. I had 5 hours of driving to do. I don't look forward to that anymore.
Well, how's it drawn? You bring fans in? It's
drawing good. We're going to have our third show coming up in Toledo, Ohio, on the 23rd of June. Our first show, there was probably around 250 people there. Our second show was around 375 people. And our next show coming up, ticket sales are going out of control for this right now. We're going to have an Iron Man match on our main event there, which is a match that's never been done in Championship International Wrestling in its history. So it's we're looking forward to it. The combatants in there is our champion is the Sinister Samurai Malice, and he's going against Michael Elgin. And those guys have had some knockdown, drag-out fights all over the place. So they're going into a 1 hour Iron Man match. And, man, I'm really looking forward to that.
Great. Well, I'm going to check it out myself. And at the end of the show, you'll give us some more information on that. And you can tell people where to go to see that. Okay.
Sounds great. Thanks.
So let's go back to young Chris Carter. By the way, is that your real name?
My real name is
No, you don't have to say your real name, but
I don't care. It's real.
Yeah.
But my middle name is Chris. And so when I first started, I thought I was going to be Christopher Carter III.
Okay.
We have these ideas in our heads, right?
Right. Every young wrestler, I think, does. They know where they want to go, and then some promoter says, "No, you're not."
Yeah. And it seemed so easy to just keep that name. It was simple.
Right. Well, how'd you get started? I mean, it's a real simple question.
Yeah.
When did you get the bug, and who trained you?
Well, the bug started for me when I was in first grade with the chicken pox, living in Detroit, Michigan. And I'm home from school. It's a Thursday night. I get to stay up late. I'm flipping through the channels. In Detroit, man, it was really amazing because most of the country had ABC, CBS, and NBC. But in Detroit, we had CBET from Windsor, which was right across the border. So I flicked on Channel 9, Big Time Wrestling, the original Sheik, and all those guys. I was hooked on it ever since.
Wow.
So I started out actually. I was trained by Al Costello, which was one of the original Fabulous Kangaroos. Him and Roy Heffernan were the original ones. I believe that Al Costello and Roy Heffernan were the first wrestlers, or one of the first wrestlers in history that came out to music in Madison Square Garden because they had Waltzing Matilda as their song. So Al didn't live too far from me at the time, and I got hooked up with him. He took me to he had a judo club that he taught us how to wrestle in. So we learned to wrestle without a ring, which was kind of different, but we adapted to it well. And that's how I started. And that was I think it was in late summer of 78. And I had my first match in December of 78 for Big Time Wrestling for the original Sheik.
Wow, you started with Big Time Wrestling.
Yeah.
Okay, which leads to the obvious question. Did you ever get in the ring with him?
I did.
Uh-oh.
I'll tell you a funny story, okay? So the original Sheik, okay? Man, he didn't speak, right? He didn't.
Right.
He
Right.
always had a mouthpiece, whether it was Eddie Creechman or the Wizard or whoever, And so Al Costello takes me back. He goes, Sheik, this is Chris Carter. Chris Carter, this is the Sheik. And the Sheik's first thing he looks at me, he goes, let me tell you something, kid. I got the pencil, and don't ever forget it. Man, that was my intro to pro wrestling. I'm the boss, okay? And no doubt about it. So you do what I tell you or you're done.
Damn Skippy. And I'll tell you what, nobody lived his gimmick like Ed Farhat.
Oh, my God.
You can name any wrestler in the world. Nobody lived it from soup to nuts, day to night, like the Sheik did.
He was the original heel that you loved to hate.
Right.
Yeah. He was, it's amazing. He was a World War II veteran.
Right.
A family man. He was all of the above. But when that bell rang, he was the Sheik.
Doggone. Oh, he was the Sheik out in the street too.
Yeah, he was.
He never broke character. If he was in public, he never broke character.
No, sir.
His whole life into his old age.
Yeah.
Amazing.
There was a word in professional wrestling back then that nobody knows today. It's called kayfabe.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So,
yeah.
Well, I should say everybody knows today.
Well, but too many people know what it means to my eyes. I'm telling you, it was better in the old days, but that's just me. Anyway, did he beat the heck out of you, or how'd it go?
It was kind of a rough match. Yeah,
I have a feeling. Yeah,
yes, It was kind of rough, and I can tell you firsthand that the camel clutch, you could feel it.
Really?
Oh, yeah. When he put it on me, I said, "Wow."
That's amazing.
Yeah.
He wasn't goofing around.
No.
But I guarantee you earned his respect if you accepted it, went with it, and reacted to it the right way. I think you probably earned his respect at that point.
Well, I did exactly what he wanted. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Oh.
So how long were you there, and where'd you go from there?
I was there for, I guess, almost 3 years, and then I got hooked up with George Cannon, Crybaby George Cannon. Does that ring a bell? And
absolutely, yes.
Yeah, he was out of Windsor, Ontario, and he had a wrestling show in Detroit area and several other TVs called Superstars of Wrestling.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And I got with him around 81, and then he hooked me up with Jerry Graham, and off we went. Jerry Graham was my manager originally.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Were you a face at that point or a heel?
No, I was a heel then. Yeah.
Oh, you started as one. Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Jerry was a heel. He still is. Yeah. He just turned 77
with a capital H. Yes, he. And I'll say this about him: the two people there that I'm most impressed with, not most impressed, but very impressed with you and Dr. Graham. Underrated as it gets. Fantastic talker.
Right.
Could talk people into the buildings, make you hate him, make you love him. He had it all going on. I do not understand how he never ended up in one of the majors. I just don't. He was that good.
It wasn't meant to be for him for some reason. None of us knows why. He had a chance with New York,
right.
As a manager, and they said something to him to the effect of, when you go out there, don't do anything and don't say anything. So that kind of told you right away that wasn't going to work for him. But I'll tell you this, it's really amazing because you break into wrestling with a person, okay? And I broke in with Al Costello, but I learned about professional wrestling from Dr. Jerry Graham and from Bulldog Don Kent. Bulldog Don Kent was such a great friend to me and was so nice to me. It was absolutely amazing. He took me under his wing and he taught me a lot of stuff. When at a very early age, we would travel around, and when we were in Detroit, I'd say, why don't you just stay over at my house, And he'd go, well, I don't want to, family and everything. And I said, no, just come on. So he stayed over, and my kids were little and stuff. And oh man, he loved my kids. He said, he goes, hey, your little boy Eric, he's got tree trunk legs, and it was just, it was so great to be with him and hang with him and get to pick his brain, man. Between him and Jerry, there's a lot to learn about wrestling as far as psychology and storytelling. That's where I learned it all.
Boy, you couldn't ask for better. And I'll tell you what, there's an underrated guy, Bulldog Duncan. That's what a heel should look like.
Oh man,
you know, he just, and as he got older, he got more imposing. Most guys don't do that.
right?
He looked meaner and nastier the older he got, and he never changed his style. And he was the quintessential roughhouse, I guess is the best way to put it.
I'll tell you, man, I loved him, and I when he passed, I was so sorry and felt so bad. But he taught me so much about wrestling. Like I said, he took me under his wing. I couldn't have asked for better teachers than Jerry and him.
You know, you're not the only person to say that about both of them. You know, I'm growing to admire them, and I've never met either one yet. But you know, it's like I keep hearing this.
Yeah,
and that's how you build a successful promotion with people like that.
Absolutely.
So okay, so now you're heading into that direction. And when did you start up with, for lack of a better term, Dick the Bruiser?
I would say about I think that was around the end of '82 or the beginning of '83. Him, Dick, and George were kind of worked together on some stuff. So Jerry got me hooked up to have a meeting with Dick the Bruiser, and so we went out. We met with him at his house, at his home, and he said, "Okay, man, you know, let's bring him to work." So, but they wanted me to come in as a baby face, and
Right.
and so that was all good. I was just happy to get there and get work, you know.
Now, if I remember correctly from scanning the tapes that are available, I don't know when you started there. What year did you start there?
Actual start wrestling or with
Bruiser? Yeah,
I think it was late '82 or early '83.
that's what I was thinking.
In the winter. Because
some of those tapes still exist, and
yeah.
you were the quintessential All-American boy, right?
Oh, yeah.
That was your shtick. You had, you know, kind of a
Spirit of America, baby.
Spirit of America. That's right. That was your nickname.
Yeah.
It was the David McLean era, I think. He used to interview you then.
You got that right, brother.
Yeah. I'll never forgive him for Glow, but that's a whole different story.
Yeah, David was a good guy.
Was he a good guy?
He still is a good guy. Yeah.
That's good to know.
We had a good relationship. That's for sure. You know, it's a funny thing because there's in my career, there's a lot of people who refer to me as a minor leaguer. You know,
doggone it.
And
doggone it. Somebody on Facebook said the same thing, and I'm going to be honest with you.
I've heard that a lot. And
right.
The thing is, I had opportunities to do a lot of things. Okay, I chose to stay closer to home. I happen to love my wife and love my family. Mm-hmm. When I was in the early years, my daughter was born in '82, and we were doing stuff with George Cannon then. I would be gone for 2-3 months touring Canada and stuff. And I come home and my daughter would cry. She didn't know who I was. I was some kind of monster in the house. That broke my heart, you know, and leaving my wife for all that time, that broke my heart too. So I made the decision that I want to stay closer to home. With WWA, we would go out almost to St. Louis and back during the weeks. But there was nights like we're in Indiana and stuff. I could come home that night. And I'd be home the next morning and stuff and see everybody. And then I'd take off again. So it was a lot of traveling and that, but I got to stay home more. And I found out early how crazy and how hard and what this business can do to people. And I didn't want that to happen to me.
Right.
So I got to do what I wanted to do on my terms. Call me whatever you like. I don't care.
No, listen, you know something? A lot of old timer main eventers decided to stick around in one area. Brings to mind Baron Mikhail Cicluna in the East, who was a main eventer probably from 66 to about 78 or so, or at least a upper mid card guy. He decided to stay home and just do the WWF circuit and not go anywhere else.
Yeah.
Because, that's usually how you would keep a heel or a face fresh. You would go to place, but he chose not to.
Mm-hmm.
He decided to be a loyal company guy and worked there till about 84, 85.
Mm-hmm.
But what happens is when you stay around long enough, you become, card filler. You're not a main eventer anymore because people have seen it already.
Right.
But that was his choice. He didn't want to travel. There's a lot more wrestlers, I think, than people realize that just get sick of that grind and want to be with their families.
Yeah.
I don't begrudge you that at all.
I never had a problem with somebody saying, "Hey, he was a regional wrestler." You know what I say to that? Thank you.
There's some doggone good regional wrestlers. Mike George springs to mind.
Oh yeah,
You know, guys who stayed in those territories. You know,
absolutely.
Bulldog Bob Brown.
Yep.
You know, the Central States guys tended to stay there. You know,
Mhm.
there's a lot of fun. You know, people bug me when they talk about minor league. You
Yeah.
know what? Hey, fella, did you ever strap them on and get hear the bell ring?
Yeah.
You know, your minor league, these guys were the pros. When
Yeah.
they got paid, they were professional. End of story.
Amen. You got it, brother.
You know, it's absolutely true. So anyway, here you are with Dick the Bruiser, working your way up the ranks.
Yeah.
I saw you get championship opportunities and some tag teams that were really good.
Yep.
And then after the David McLean era, here comes, I mean, you can fill me in if I'm wrong. Right after that, here came Bruiser Bedlam, right?
Right. That was 80. Well, actually, it really got kicking in 86.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That
we
late?
were, we were doing the WWA thing, and that was all good. Then in 86, there was a gentleman, Jim Fletcher. He actually owned the Detroit Tigers, and he sold the Tigers to Tom Monahan in 84. And he had one of the first pay television networks that I can remember. It was called Pass TV in Detroit. And you had to pay for that service, and they would come out and they would put some kind of antenna on your roof to receive that. And they would put something in your TV where you could receive that, but you had to pay for it. And so he had Pass TV. He had Tiger games on there. He had some other sports on there. He had different things on there, and he decided he wanted to do wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
So he was working with a lawyer in Detroit who was also a boxing promoter. Bill Kazurski was his name. Bill Kazurski somehow got in touch with Jerry and talked about wrestling. And so Jerry said, "Hey, man, we can go do this. I'm going to have a meeting with this guy. Let's go over there and talk to him." I said, "Okay." So we went to his office and we sat down. We talked with him in very early 1986 and put together a program and started doing our actual Bruiser Bedlam tapings and things, I think in April or May of 86.
Mm-hmm.
And did a lot of taping there. And then that went into all the TVs that Dick still had all throughout the territory.
Mm-hmm. He could still draw, couldn't he?
Man, I'm telling you, even back then, when he didn't work a lot,
Mm-hmm.
when he came out, they packed in for him.
They loved him there. It's not enough people talk about, when wrestling nostalgia or certain people in certain cities. Dick the Bruiser in Indianapolis, man, and in that region, he was just it for the longest time.
Forever.
Yeah.
I mean, WWA, I think that started in the 60s or something.
Sure.
Mid-60s.
Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah.
Go back to those great Sam Muchnick, Sam Menaker tapes.
Yeah.
Those are great, aren't they?
No, come on, man. That was awesome. I love that stuff.
Yeah. Bobby Heenan, all those guys are in it. It was awesome.
Isn't it great today how we have access to all that stuff?
I agree with you.
And we never did before.
I don't know what I do without it sometimes. I get done watching AEW. I want to watch, I want to watch Ox Baker.
Yeah. Oh, no kidding, man.
So anyway, it got off to kind of a slow start, Bruiser Bedlam. Then you'd be the first to admit that. We talked about it before some of the talent wasn't quite there. It was, but they brought in Terry Sullivan.
Right.
Who did play-by-play with Dick doing color commentary.
Right.
And it was really enjoyable in that regard. Terry talked about how sometimes it was hard to work with Dick because he would, not understand the jokes he was telling and things like that. Yeah. But together they sounded very natural. And I love the way they started and ended the shows with little interviews and stuff like that. So the show had a different, I don't know how to put it. It had a personality.
It sure did. And that was because of those guys, because the way they delivered the show, especially Terry, he has such a knowledge of the business. It is absolutely unbelievable. Talk about a guy helping get you over. Talk about a guy helping get a story over. That was him. He knew how to do that, and it was just perfect the way he did that.
And you know what's amazing about him as a commentator? To his, when I had him on the show, I literally compared him to Gordon Solie in that he didn't have to yell to get things over. He didn't have a false sense of excitement. He would get outraged at the bad guys and excited about the good guys, but he always kept it on a nice, even keel. That's a hard thing to do in wrestling. And he was probably the most underrated play-by-play man ever. He was really good.
I would say most underrated in the history of professional wrestling.
Oh, yeah, I definitely agree with that.
Yeah. And to think that he's still going today and doing the same kind of things, and telling me, okay, we got to do this. We got to do that. Okay, wait till I stop.
I'll tell you, to still have that enthusiasm all these years later, it's really heartwarming. I like hearing what you tell me because I had no idea, and I think it's really great. So
I love Terry
because I'm a big Terry Sullivan fan.
Yeah.
I always referred to him on those Detroit tapes as the kid. He was this long-haired kid that showed up out of nowhere, he worked, in case the listeners don't realize, he originally worked for the Sheik when he was like a kid. To be honest with you,
he was, yes, yeah. Terry's I think he's maybe a year older than me, so yeah, he was a kid working for the Sheik, no doubt about it.
I always think of him as a kid because the first time I saw Terry, I went and bought Pedro Martinez, who was a wrestling promoter in Cleveland, retired. And he had access to a whole mess of old shows. So in the early days of VHS, he was selling them, and you could pick out what individual shows you could buy. And I sent away mail order as a young adult. I sent away for this stuff. Now, everything that said the Sheik on it, I ordered because I never saw the Sheik. The territories.
Yeah.
Right? He never came east. So I ordered a whole mess of Sheik tapes, and that's where I first saw Terry Sullivan. I think I have the first episode he was ever on. We have a newcomer to the show. And he was working with I don't know if it was Bob Finnegan or whoever
something
it was.
Like that. Bob Finnegan, yeah. Yep.
Yeah, and then the other fellow, whose name is escaping me right now.
Chuck somebody.
Right, Chuck. Yeah, Chuck. Very dramatic ring announcer. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, Terry says even to this day, he goes, I hated that, man. I had to wear a tuxedo. You know how uncomfortable that.
Mm-hmm. He also tells the story how the Sheik gave him the job too, which is hilarious.
Oh yeah.
He just walked up. I think he invited Terry into the limousine and said, I'll give you the job, but don't tell anybody I did this.
Yeah, yeah.
Or something like that. And threatened him.
I can tell you right now, the Sheik was extremely close to Terry Sullivan. Mm-hmm. And it was pretty amazing the relationship they had with the Sheik being the Sheik. And he took Terry, brought him in and said, come on, you're going to be with me, kid.
Right. So let's get back to Bruiser Bedlam. And I'm watching these shows. I'm trying to watch them in chronological order. Thank you, Dave Dynasty, wherever you are, man.
Yeah.
So I'm watching them, and I'm watching the Hooded Hangman. And then the next week I noticed it's a different Hooded Hangman. And then, but there were other.
That was his cousin, the other Hooded Hangman.
The other cousin Hangman, okay. Yeah. And we had Moose Cholak, bless his heart, because I understand from Terry, he was traveling all the way from Chicago to do those spots, wasn't he?
Yeah. Sure was.
That's dedication, man. And he was not the most limber fellow at that point.
No, he was not feeling well most of the time at that time.
But you know what? He was still over.
Man, you know what? He had that moose head, and he was still wearing that. But when he was younger, he would get up into the ring with it on. That was 90 pounds. Now,
incredible.
At this point in time, when he got to the ring, he took it off.
Right.
Then he got in.
It was a struggle for him to get in the ring in those tapes. But you know what? I give him, they used him right, though. They didn't overuse him or make him the champion. He was like Andre, a special attraction.
Yeah, he didn't have any 30-minute matches, no.
No, that's for sure. Yeah. But anyway, he was like one of the bigger stars at that point. And I'm seeing some more young talent come in. And then I lost the chronological order of the tapes. And all of a sudden, I'm seeing you. I'm seeing El Bracero.
Yeah.
I'm seeing Calypso Jim.
Yeah.
I'm seeing the heel tag team of Don Kent and Dr. Jerry Graham.
Yeah.
While he's managing at the same time, Dr. Graham, mouthing off.
Wojo, yeah.
And all of a sudden, I'm seeing backstage interviews. I'm seeing Dr. Jerry Graham's segment like Roddy Piper used to have.
Graham's Gallery.
Graham's Gallery, that's right. I'm seeing an increase in creativity that's really pleasing. You know, it was really fun. And it started to look polished.
Yeah.
You know, your matches were great. They always had a lot of heat. But I noticed the crowds were dwindling. But not for long.
No.
I want to take you, what year was it that Scott Rechsteiner came in?
I'm going to say that was the end of 85.
Okay. Now, I'm not putting this all on him because Wojo was popular and he used to do that bit where he would actually take on fans at the arenas, right?
Yeah.
Tell me about that. That's unbelievable they would even allow that to happen.
They actually, to go a step further than that, they actually had $100,000 that they put out for any wrestling champion to wrestle Wojo. That Nick Bockwinkel, Ric Flair, Hulk Hogan, whoever, if you could beat the Great Wojo, you get $100,000.
And that was legit. They were going to do that.
It was legit, and nobody wanted nothing to do with him.
No, he was a legitimate
because
tough
they
man.
knew what a bad man he was.
You could have said it, badass.
A badass. Right?
No, he looked the part too. You wouldn't want to mess with him.
You don't make him mad.
Stocky and strong, and just was he a shooter?
Yes, he was. He was on the 1980 Olympic team, and he got a gold medal for that. And that was the year that Jimmy Carter boycotted the Olympics in Moscow.
Right.
But they all got gold medals. But the thing is, I mean, he was on the Olympic team, so that took something to get there.
That's right.
He was one badass, and that's no joke, man. I mean, nobody wanted to mess with him. And and then they do a $10,000 challenge. Of course, guy had to sign a waiver, you know. If he got hurt, he wasn't going to sue anybody or anything. And it was funny because Wojo would go in the ring and he'd play around with these guys for a few minutes, and Jerry Graham would go, okay, that's it. Next thing you know, boom, done.
Stretch him.
Yeah, stretch him out, baby.
Oh, man. I will say this. From what Terry told me, he was like you in that Wojo probably could have worked anywhere he felt like working, but stay close to home. Is that accurate?
Well, you know, that is extremely accurate. Yes. Wojo was I'm going to say he was a great father, and he loved his kids. And he didn't have the best marriage, you know, but he took care of his kids. He ended up with his kids, and he raised his kids.
That's a man right there.
That's a real man.
Yep.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yep. He was a great man. He was. I was proud to know him, just because of the stature of a man that he was. Yeah,
we all have a few people like that in our lives, and you go, "Boy, that you couldn't have done better."
No,
you couldn't have done better.
No.
So it's nice to hear that. That's really cool. I always admired him as an athlete too, because I wouldn't want to face him. That's all I know. He had that look, man. I'm not near him.
I had a few matches with him. Okay.
Oh, I know you did. Yeah.
And I know that for about 3 or 4 days after, I knew I had a match with him.
There you go. Yeah. Yeah.
So
anyway, here's Chris Carter.
Yeah.
Well, let's go back. Let's take another tack on this. Somewhere along the line, they gave Dr. Jerry Graham, as they say in today's wrestling parlance, the book.
Yeah.
How did that come about? Because when they did give him the book, things got really interesting. And maybe you can help me understand what happened at that point.
That was in the early Bruiser Bedlam days. Dick the Bruiser had everything, you know. And he said, you know, Jerry, I think I'm going to have you book this. And so Jerry had one of the best wrestling minds I've ever seen in my life. But Jerry was also the kind of person that he would talk with me. He would talk with Wojo. He would talk with Don Kent. And we would kind of collaborate ideas. And I think that's something that made it great, was his openness to bring others in and let them say their ideas.
Pretty rare. I'm sure that's a change for Dick the Bruiser too.
Oh yeah, because Dick the Bruiser was the man, and that's it.
Right.
Yeah. So
So things are starting to change a little bit, and you're still the All-American scientific star, and somewhere in there, you're going to have to explain because you're the answer to a lot of questions I have about this era. Somehow, Dr. Graham on camera was a smart mouth, smart aleck manager and wrestler. Everybody hated his guts.
Mm-hmm.
He was probably the most hated person there for about a year and a half, I would say. Everybody hated Dr. Graham.
Yep.
You boo.
Yeah.
But he turned face and you turned heel? What?
Well,
how did this all come about? First of all, I know what you did, but I don't know when you did it, and I don't know how he turned face too. Was it at the same time, or was there overlap on this?
there was a little overlap on it. He had a car accident.
For real?
For real.
Mm-hmm.
And his leg is still nut and bolted together to this day, of course. And that accident was very bad for him. It put him out of wrestling. So we said, well, we need to change some stuff around.
Mm-hmm.
That's where the change came in through the accident. That's what I talked about earlier with the perfect mix of reality and fantasy together to start drawing crowds. So he had the accident, and then I start up. Jerry Graham was my friend and everything. He's such a wimp. He has a little car accident and he can't wrestle anymore. I tell you what, I can't stand him because I looked up to him and everything. He was like a brother to me. Now he's nothing more than a wimp, crippled up old man. And we went from there.
That doesn't even sound like you.
Yeah.
But didn't you also, at that same period, betray your country?
That was shortly after with me and Mohammed Jihad Saad,
right,
my tag team partner from Beirut, Lebanon. And I would have the Arabic kafia on my head.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be waving the Lebanese flag, and he had the American flag.
And how did that come about? I know you ended up tagging with him. Did you just show up with him one day, or was there an incident in the ring that caused this all to happen?
Well, first off, me and him went back. We broke in with Al Costello together.
Okay, all right.
Me and Saad. So we were together for a lot of years. And that was something that we had this idea to do this freedom fighter thing. And Jerry thought, hey, that might be good. So we got going on it.
Just like that.
Yeah, pretty much.
Boy, people hated your guts, man.
Oh, my God. I tell you what, the minute we opened the curtain and came out, that was it. Stuff was flying.
Right.
People were screaming, yelling.
And this is what I want to impress upon people who are listening. The heat on these shows, gang, was rising by the week. They were getting legitimate old school villain heat during probably one of the most homogenized eras in wrestling, the mid 80s, right? I mean, while it was, ice cream bars on the other channel, you guys were having some hellacious fights on your show.
Yeah.
Very unlike WWE, completely unlike anything else that was on TV at that point.
I think some of our shows were better than even the old time original guys because our heat was at a fever pitch.
And he is not saying this because he was doing it, folks. You got to look up these tapes. Look up Dave Dynasty on YouTube and look up anything that says Bruiser Bedlam on it and start watching these shows. There are some matches. People like to talk about the 1974 match in Cleveland where Ox Baker is fighting Ernie Ladd and Johnny Powers interferes on Baker's behalf.
Okay.
And Ox Baker is heart punching Ladd on the mat over and over and over again. And here comes a riot for real.
Mm-hmm.
There was such heel heat that Powers had to run off through the arena. And I don't know how the hell Ox Baker got the heck out of there.
Yeah.
But that was the closest thing to a full-fledged, we're going to storm the ring type of moment.
Yeah.
You guys, and you had other stars like, Scott Rechsteiner came in. He was the world champion in his first match. He won the belt.
Yep.
You also had a big guy named Cowboy Rex Brody and a lot of other people. Yep. There's more people I need to mention.
He was a shooter too. Michigan State.
He was a shooter?
Yeah. Michigan State. And Scott Steiner at the time, he came in from U of M, and he was number 3 at that time in the all-time win list.
Right. Oh yeah, he was.
And
I
then
think
Rex Bodie was a shooter at Michigan State.
I think Graham saw Scott and went, "Oh my gosh, this is it."
Oh my God, we all said, "Oh my God, this is it."
yeah, he had to look, didn't he?
Yeah. Oh, he had to look is right. And
yeah.
you know.
So anyway, there are some matches during this period when you have heel Chris Carter here. There was one match on a YouTube tape that's called Wrestling's Bloodiest Battles. It's put up by Dr. Graham, as you told me before.
Yeah.
And the finale of this match, he's hobbled walking for the first time in ages.
Yeah.
Dr. Jerry Graham on a ring apron. I think I don't know if he interfered in the match. It's not even important. The fact is, this hobbled poor man was drugged in the ring by you. You took his cast off and beat him with it.
So the lead up to that, though, was that I had the match with Scott.
Right.
Okay. And Jihad Saad was kind of managing me at that time.
Mm-hmm.
So he hit Scott with a blackjack. I pinned him 1, 2, 3, become the new champion.
Right.
The referee, I get the belt, I put it on me. Here comes Jerry Graham on his cane, walking up the step, barely hanging onto the rope, barely getting into the ring. Referee, come here. He goes, here's what happened. This is what. And the referee goes, what? And then the blackjack was in Saad's back pocket. Pulled that out, and the referee goes, oh no, that's it. He ripped that belt off me and put it back on Scott Steiner. I went over to Jerry Graham. I said, you son of a, and I hit him right in the jaw, bam, on the ring apron. Down he went. Cane crutch goes flying, yank him in the ring, get him down, beat the crap out of him, pull that cast off, and just open him up.
So here's you bastard.
Yeah.
Here's Chris Carter beating the living hell out of a guy who can barely walk.
Yeah.
Right? He's bloody as all hell.
Yeah.
And here comes the crowd.
Yeah.
Getting closer and closer to that ring, folks. And I mean this. And they are yelling and they are hot. This was real old school Detroit style heat right there.
I was a little bit nervous, to be honest with you.
Yeah, so I'm glad that it is the way we saw it on television.
Yeah.
I saw it correctly. Those fans, if they ever got their hands on you, I'm telling you, it was really a scary moment there.
Yeah, everybody knew that Jerry was legitimately hurt. Okay, they knew that, and we exploited that to the absolute maximum, and that's what we got.
And so, fans, there was heat in that match and a lot of other matches, and I'll tell you what, I'm looking at these things in as close to chronological order as I could. The crowds were getting bigger, they were getting hotter.
Oh man, we were.
I think that your group, Scott, you, Dr. Jerry, down the list. Just go down the list. You guys saved Bulldog Duncan. You guys saved that territory. You did. I don't even know if it was acknowledged at that point by anybody, but the transformation between the show 2 years earlier to then, phenomenal. Yeah. It really was. So I want to congratulate all of you for one of wrestling's biggest secrets that I want people to find out about. The stuff was really doggone good. It was really good.
And it's really amazing. That was such a great time in all of our lives because it clicked.
Yeah.
And I mean, we were packing them in, man, every place we went. And I mean, it was serious business every night. And at a lot of times I wondered, how am I going to get out of this ring? and there was many times that I stayed at the building for over 2 hours to make sure everybody was gone before I went out. I parked my car 3 blocks away and walked to the building with my bag. And then I would wait 2 hours after, and I'd be looking around and walking, and I'm looking back and forth. Anybody watching? Because people were out there sometimes waiting an hour for me at the door, and they were just yelling, "F you, Carter, F you." Oh.
And by the way, I want people to know this too. Helping to get Mr. Carter over at this point, somewhere along the line, he became the co-host on the wraparounds that they would show the matches on in Bruiser Bedlam, and like you would see Terry Sullivan behind the desk. Sitting next to him was Chris Carter. And this is why I rank you up with Zbyszko. You used to be the soft-spoken kid and, will do anything to win him, anything that's right. And all of a sudden you became this snarky, sarcastic, nasty, rule-breaking. You were the worst, man. And that's a skill. I didn't see that coming. The Chris Carter that was a heel was nothing like the old Chris Carter
gift
at all. Who encouraged you to do that? It must have been Dr. Jerry, right?
Well, yeah. And Jerry was in a wheelchair for a while, and he was doing some wraparounds with Terry. I said, Jerry, I got an idea. He goes,
I know what's coming. I know what's coming.
He said, I said, I'm going to come to the wraparounds. I'm going to bring you a tin cup with some pencils in it. And I'm going to come up and throw a couple quarters in the can. And I set up a hellacious explosion of shelving units and all this stuff in the TV studio over on the side. And I came in there and I said, this is about enough of all this, something to that extent. I said, Jerry Graham, you're a crippled up old man. There's no room for you in wrestling. Okay. So I threw a couple quarters in the tin can, and Jerry's got the best look on his face like you never seen. I mean, this was an Oscar performance from all of us. And I shoved him off in the wheelchair and everything just crashed, bang, boom. Terry Sullivan was just stunned and everything. I put that lavalier on. I sat back down. I said, okay, it's about time this show got better. Let's talk about it.
I saw this tape and it's even more outrageous than he's making it sound, folks. It's like so unbelievably tasteless and mean. And like you see him push that wheelchair and it goes off camera and then 1, 2, 3, crash.
Yeah. Jerry, he says, make sure you give me a good shove. I said, no problem, brother.
Great stuff. Tremendous stuff. Right up there with any Piper's Pit anybody ever saw, my friend.
Yeah. It's funny that you talk about Larry Zbyszko, because we actually, back in Superstars of Wrestling days, I tag teamed with him.
Are you serious?
Yeah, we went around places for George Cannon in Canada and stuff, in Detroit, and tag team. That was in the early 80s.
To me, the Bruno Zbyszko feud was the greatest thing I'd ever seen.
The thing I remember the most about Larry Zbyszko, this is incredible. The first time I met him, he just came back from Japan, okay? And he goes, hey, Chris, I want you to try this. Put this on. I was, what is this? I put on these earphones or whatever, headphones on, small ones. And Abracadabra by the Steve Miller Band is playing. It's a Sony Walkman. And he had that 7 months before they got into the U.S. because he brought it from Japan. And just something I never forgot. And we hit it off that night.
That's great. How long did you work with him? Just a few spots or?
Yeah, a few spots. Yeah, maybe 3 or 4 months or something.
That's good. That's great.
Oh, it was great. I learned a lot from him, too.
Oh, well, he was an information sponge and a really brilliant guy. He was, he learned from a good one, too, I think,
I think so.
Yeah. Well, okay.
It was so funny when you said that about the second best turn. I said, well,
yeah.
Hey, cool, man.
No, look, that turn filled a baseball stadium. We'll put it that way.
42,000 from that
yeah,
Shea
whatever
Stadium,
it was. Yeah,
44,000 back then.
I rest my case.
Yeah,
dude, I went out in 1980 or 81 when they started this thing, and it all started when Bruno was a ringside interviewer. He said, "I'm going to interview Larry Zbyszko," and Zbyszko just kept walking. Then 2 weeks that happened. He just kept walking. I wasn't rich at the time, but I took $1,000 and bought one of those newfangled VCR machines because I saw something was about to happen here.
Yeah.
And I still have those tapes to this day.
Isn't that great?
Really do, yeah. The tapes were $24.95. That was a lot of money back then.
I remember those days.
Yeah.
And my first VCR, the remote control had a wire on it.
It's the same with mine. Yeah. And all it did was pause, right?
Yep.
That's all it did. The only thing you had fans was click and it would pause. That's it. So you could edit the commercials out as you're watching TV.
Unbelievable.
That was the only feature.
Yeah.
Big honking heavy machines too. RCA line was, yeah.
Well, if you hit somebody with it, you'd kill them.
Yes, you would. And their whole family. Those things were heavy, boy.
Oh, yeah.
So anyway, this is where my knowledge base cuts off. All right, this is all I've been able to look at the Bruiser Bedlam. What happened in subsequent years? How did it go after that? Because you were red hot. I know Scott left after a while because probably all the promotions were probably tugging him by the sleeve to go and join them.
His brother, was out there, and his brother wanted him to come with him, and they did the Steiner brother thing. So I mean, we all know where that went. Right to the roof, right through the roof to the moon.
Right. So, and I've seen a couple of the really late period shows, but to be honest, I didn't recognize the person on them. They brought him some new, I guess. Is the Golden Lion really Dick the Bruiser's son? Is that right?
Son-in-law.
Son-in-law.
Married Dick's daughter.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So that period, I saw a couple of times. Yeah.
He was a good guy.
Again, I'm looking at the shows. It wasn't all really that much longer. And I went, I don't know these people.
Yeah.
I didn't recognize them.
Yeah.
What was your story? When did you decide? How much longer did you go? When did you decide to wrap it up?
We went until about 91, maybe a little bit of 92, and then it just closed down.
But that's a pretty good run, though.
It was a great run.
Yeah.
After that, I have a very good friend in Detroit area, Gary Warrenchak.
Mm-hmm.
Gary Warrenchak was a road agent for the NWA. He and Gary Juster worked together, and I could have went and worked at the NWA, but I just didn't want to do all that. But so towards the end of mid 92 or so, Gary and I decided to do another local promotion called MTW. It was Midwest Territorial Wrestling. And we were based in Southeast Michigan, out in a suburb. We did a lot of shows in a suburb of Detroit, Taylor, Michigan, but we ran around Michigan. We did Jackson, we did Port Huron, we did these other towns. And that was an incredible thing. And there's a lot of stuff on MTW online also, Midwest Territorial Wrestling. And Gary was able to do something that was unheard of in that time, and that was work co-promotion with some people. Like he would work with Jim Cornette, and we would get some talent from him, and they would come in for us, and we would split trans with them and stuff. I mean, man, we had Terry Funk came in, Cactus Jack came in, Matt Bourne, the original Doink the Clown, came in,
Mm-hmm.
Too Cold Scorpio, Rock and Roll Express, Jim Cornette, Sabu. I can't even remember all the guys that came in. Oh, Road Warrior Hawk. It was just absolutely amazing promotion. One night in 1993, Terry Funk wrestled Sabu. We were in this ice arena in Taylor, Michigan. There was over 3,000 people packed in that place. It was like sardines. And that was the main event was Terry Funk and Sabu. And they probably broke, I think at that time, about $1,100 worth of tables and stuff they broke up in the arena that we had to pay for. So we weren't real happy about that.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing about that night was they had to call the police to come in and direct traffic to get out of the parking lot because people were having fist fights and stuff and they were trying to cut in front of each other. And one of the police officers, he was a captain or something at the time, comes to me and goes, I don't know what the hell you guys did here tonight, but I've been a cop here for 20 years. I never had to come here and direct traffic to get out of any event. So it was big.
It was big.
It was huge. And we had that going. But myself and Muhammad Jihad Saad, International Freedom Fighters, we did a little program with Road Warrior Hawk and Calypso. And we actually dropped the belts to those guys. And then we came back with a blow-off match, and we got it back. We threw fire in Hawk's face and hit Jim. Calypso Jim was something and pinned him and got our belts back.
Wow, you kept going a lot longer than I knew. That's really interesting to me.
Yeah.
That it kept going and going.
Yeah.
So you were able to integrate what you guys were doing for Bruiser or for WWA into a different area.
Yeah.
And we had the same flavor to it.
And, again, like you said earlier, there was no internet at the time or anything.
Right.
We were just promoting, going out, putting flyers, posters. We had a program that we made, MTW. I would go around to local businesses and stuff and get them to buy ads in the program and stuff. We had one program, we had $1,200 worth of ads in 1993 or 94. It was amazing, and we had some really, really good crowds there. Like I said, Gary Warnchak, he was another great, great wrestling person. He got out there and he hustled with guys, and he knew how to integrate talent and bring it in. It was just an amazing thing. It was really, really good. So that went on. That ended up in, I guess, about 96 or so, something like that. We had about a two and a half year run out of that, which was pretty good.
For that era, it's awesome because the territories were closing up left and right at that point.
It was crazy. It was unbelievable.
I mean, even Cornette closed up around 93, 94, I think. So,
yeah,
it's like it was getting harder and harder. Even Memphis was, winding down.
And I worked some spot shows here and there for a while. And then early 2000s, I got a call from Rudy Hill, Rude Boy, who wrestled with the Juggalos and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
If you ever heard of him.
Sure.
But he was doing a promotion, IBW, International Big Time Wrestling, which he still does to this day somewhat. And he called me in to go in there, and I started doing some stuff with them in around maybe it was 03 or something, and hung out off and on there for about 15 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
You just kept going and going.
Yeah, we did that, and he had actually towards the end he had a TV thing that he had going. And Terry was doing some commentary for him, and then Rudy and his son Carlito gave me an opportunity to do some commentary with Terry back then. So I started doing it a little bit back then and stuff. And so one thing led to another, and we did that for a while. And then the CIW Championship International Wrestling came up for me about a year ago, and been kicking with that now. And
it's all come full circle. There you are with Terry again.
There I am with Terry. Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome.
It's just amazing because it's like for me, wrestling is like a disease. It's in my blood, and it ain't going nowhere.
Well, yeah, it's a disease, but I can tell with you, it makes you feel good, not bad.
I love it, man.
Yeah.
I'm 70 years old. We had a show the other night. I did so much. It was unbelievable. I had to run the dressing room, had to set up promos with everybody, had to do commentary. It was a great night, man. I got home, I was dead, but I said, man, it was great.
The best indie promotions are the ones where everybody chips in.
Yeah. I'll tell you this thing, Championship International Wrestling, Phil Nitro Monahan. I'm telling you, man, he is a great guy. He brought us in, and he listens to our ideas, and we have really done some real good things with that promotion and getting it stepped in a right direction.
All right. So if that's the case, tell the fans here where they can see it. Is it on YouTube and that kind of thing?
It's on YouTube. It's on Facebook, CIWProWrestling.com. And that gives you all the info.
That's great.
And like I said, we have a big show Toledo coming up with that Iron Man match. And I'm still kicking at it, man. I love every minute of it.
There you go. Well, let me ask you the question that all of us old timers ask each other. What do you think of today's wrestling? Did you ever think that they would fill a football stadium 2 nights in a row for a special event? Even that was beyond my wildest dreams when I was even involved with the magazines.
150,000 people in 2 nights. Can you believe that? Well, I'll tell you what. I mean, honestly, I tip my hat to Triple H, the WWE. I think the best thing that happened to WWE in the last 20 years was Triple H taking it over.
I agree. Absolutely true.
He is not only a great family man, but a great person. I mean, when holidays come along, those guys are all home for the holidays, and they take time off. And he takes care of them very well. And he takes care of guys in the wrestling business that have never been taken care of like that. One time, years ago, I think it was 86 or something, we're at the Pontiac Silverdome, and the Metro Detroit area Ford dealers all got together and sponsored the show that Dick the Bruiser had in their parking lot on a Saturday afternoon. Main event was Boba Brazil, Dick the Bruiser, and Chris Carter against Dr. Jerry Graham, the Great Wojo, and Bulldog Don Kent.
Did I just see a photo of that in social media?
Yeah, that's my photo that's out there.
There you go.
My son posted that.
There you go.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, when the heck was this taken? Because, you weren't exactly Go back a few years, you never would have teamed with those two guys.
No, that's
right. But that's awesome.
It's funny because Dick the Bruiser, that was all his stuff. That day it was hysterical because they set the ring up so fast. Some of the boards were kind of crappy. I got in the ring and I saw, man, I hate this, So anyway, I'm in there. Of course, I'm the guy that's got to do all the selling and everything. And I'm getting up and my foot gets caught in between two boards and I tear the cartilage in my knee.
Oh, boy.
I can't get up. And Dick's over in the corner. Get over here, Carter, and tag me. Okay, come over. What's the matter with you? And I'm like, I can't move. He goes, what? I said, I tore something in my knee. I can't get up. He goes, oh, we don't pay extra for that. And so that became a big thing that we said for several years after that. It's funny, too, because my whole family was involved in wrestling. My wife would run the concession stand. My cousin would do something else. My sister, Cheryl, she did different stuff for us. And she came up to me one day and said, what do you think about me and my friend Jan coming up to the ring and taking your jackets and stuff? And we were very young then, so we all looked a lot different. And I said, you know what? That's great, but we don't pay extra for that. But she came and did it anyway. And it was a blast.
That's
so my
definitely...
whole family's been around it. My wife's been great to me all these years.
I'll tell you what.
46 years I got in October.
For a veteran like yourself to come on a show like this, and I can tell you're as happy now doing it as you were in your prime, man, that's great. I'm enjoying meeting you and finding out that you're pretty much the guy that people say you are, that you have been a kind of a bright light in your region for a long time. And I'm honored to have you here. I really am. Man,
thank you so much. That is an incredible compliment coming from a man of your stature and where you've been and what I'm
a glorified fan, man. That's all it is. That's all it is.
It's funny because when you text me, you said I was kind of, didn't know if I should ask you. And I'm sitting here thinking, gee, I wonder if I knew anybody that could ask him if I could be on his show.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Well, I think my comment on this show got around.
It did. It really did.
I really admired your heel turn.
Yeah.
Because you went from...
I think Phil Monahan actually contacted you and said, hey, Chris Carter would like to come on your show.
And you know what? Here, Phil Monahan, thank you, because you're the one that kind of nudged us together here. So that's right. It was Phil Monahan, and I got to give him the credit for bringing us together on this.
He's a great guy.
Other people were telling me, Dave too, was like, I guess the word got around that you heard what I had said, and I'm glad you appreciated it, because you know what? You needed to hear it. You needed to hear it because now, fans, you're listening to the show. That means you're an old timer like the rest of us, because this is the Outdated Wrestling Hours, the name of the show.
Yeah.
I want you to go on YouTube and watch Bruiser Bedlam. You're going to see some shows, you'll go, but you're going to see some shows, you're going to go, oh my God.
Yeah.
This is some hot stuff. Look for also a video called Wrestling's Bloodiest Battles, which was put out by Dr. Jerry Graham. And that period, and also the best of, I think there's a Scott Steiner tape on the early Scott Steiner, the early years is called.
There's some of our matches on there. We had
a
studio match in front of about 250 people that was so hot. It was unbelievable. Those people were out of their minds. I didn't have to say anything or do anything. I just had to appear.
Right.
And
that's how over you were as a heel at that point.
Yeah.
So folks, I am telling you, this is really not kind of good or at the fringes of good. It's borderline greatness here. In fact, I'll just say it's great, because I was blissfully unaware of it when it was happening. And now all these decades later, I get to watch it. You guys go watch it too. And you get back to me and you tell me that I'm right on this, because I am right. Bruiser Bedlam was a good show, and its height, you should have been there, just like Vince Carter was.
When you put that post out and you said second best heel turn, I said, wow, man, that's really something. I got a lot of calls about that.
You were such a wonderful slime ball, man. I mean, I don't know how else to put it. Because you were
my wife.
Yeah, you were the last guy that I would have ever thought would be that type of a snark-filled, nasty, rude. You turned on a dime. And it was really good work. And I appreciated it then, and I appreciate it now. I really do.
Thank you so much, man. I appreciate, thank you, Jerry, and everybody else involved, giving me that opportunity to do that. And he said, "You think you can do it?" I says, "I'm going to give it my best shot."
Well, I have you know that soon, I don't know when, but Dr. Graham has agreed to come on the show too. On this show.
I just saw him. We just went out to lunch a couple of weeks ago.
Is that right?
Yep, just before his birthday. His birthday was just on the 7th.
There's another guy that more people need to understand what he did, where he's been. Fascinating story about him with Dr. Jerry Graham, the original.
Yeah.
And how long his career went and what kind of a mind he had and what kind of a presence he had on the camera. It was the WWF's greatest mistake not using him to his full potential.
Yeah, and Jerry Graham Jr. got to spend a lot of time with him.
Right, right. Yeah.
Need I say more?
Yeah, exactly. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is Chris Carter. I am so happy you're here, and I wish you nothing but the best in your current endeavors. And let's talk again. You want to come back someday?
Oh, I would love to, man. I'd love to be able to come back and give you an update on Championship International Wrestling.
All right, we'll do that. We'll do that
when
soon.
We blow it through the roof.
You better. Don't make me look bad now, okay?
I'm working on it. I'm working on it.
Ladies and gentlemen, the one and only Chris Carter. Thanks for being here.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
I hope you learned a lot this time in the Outdated Wrestling Hour. I know I did, and it answered a lot of questions that I had about Chris Carter and the entire scene there in Indianapolis and the surrounding area. And I'll tell you what, give the man a hand. His name is Chris Carter, and he worked his butt off to become what he was as a professional wrestler. He's finally remembered around that region, even to this day. And I'll tell you what, it was good stuff in its prime. It really was. And I'm not saying they didn't have their slumps, and I'm not saying things got a little hairy near the end of, Bruiser Bedlam. But I will say this. At its core, that magical middle section of Bruiser Bedlam, it was as good as any wrestling TV show on the air. And that's saying a lot, and I mean it too. I would have rather watched that than, Matilda the Bulldog and the Dumpster and, Repo Man. 10 times out of 10, I'd rather watch this. Our usual commercial announcements. OutdatedWrestlingHour.buzzsprout.com. You can listen to all of our shows on our website and find out about them and read about the show. You can learn about the Outdated Wrestling Hour fan club, where for a nominal fee, you can help perpetuate the success of the show. And we appreciate all of you. And please watch your email boxes, members. I'm going to presently send out a date for another Zoom-style chat. Give away a prize or two, and we'll have a little fun, okay? So we'll do that once again. Write to us at outdatedwrestling@gmail.com. Find us on Facebook. I don't have a dedicated page for this, but I'm just Bob Smith, and you can find me singing with B.B. King. That's me. Type in Bob Smith. Amongst the 8,000 Bob Smiths, I'm hoping you'll find me there. I have a, longish hair in my little circle photo there. And the photo's about 10 years old at this point. My hair's still pretty long. I could still grow it. I haven't gone bald yet. We'll put it that way. I want you to check out our sister podcast. It's called the Outdated Entertainment Hour. We just started it. We have episodes on the rock band, The Guess Who. We've got an episode on Americana music with the rising star Pete Mancini coming up. We also have our debut show with Brian R. Solomon, who all of you wrestling fans know. And we talk about everything but wrestling, which is really kind of cool. He knows so much about animation. It's scary. That's what we talk about, the return of the classic cartoons. And we got an upcoming show on. You ready, guys? The Three Stooges. Yeah, I knew you'd react that way. This is going to be a lot of fun. I had a history writing an article about them a long time ago, and I'm going to dredge it up. We're going to talk about that and them and a whole lot more. So, as you know, the Outdated Wrestling Hour and the Outdated Entertainment Hour are productions of Bob Smith podcasts. The Outdated Wrestling Hour comes on every Friday night. We may be taking a break because it looks like I'm going to have some, for lack of a better term, surgery, and I might need a little time off. But I'll let you know about that through social media and hopefully here too. The Outdated Entertainment Hour comes out about bi-weekly, and they come out on Wednesdays. This show comes out every Friday, the Outdated Wrestling Hour. We hope you'll spend your weekend or part of the early part of the following week with us. We value you guys. We really do. You have made this show. You know, I started this after spending a year in another podcast as a co-host. I mean, most of you know that. And I started this with a lot of trepidation, thinking, can I do this on my own? And the answer is yes. And I really appreciate your support, whether you're a fan club member or not. The fact that you will listen every week means so much. It validates everything I ever did back in the day. And we're going to have some more great guests coming up. We're booking them fast and furious. And we're going to have a couple of surprising names that I think will knock you off your seat. So until that happens, my name is Bob Smith. Thank you for being here on the Outdated Wrestling Hour, and we'll see you soon. And until then, in the words of Ringo Starr and his bandmates, all you need is love.